What I have some concerns about, though, are the responsibilities that we have as individual elected members here to understand what we are voting on. So I, as a courtesy, talked to the Mayor prior to this. At the workshop last Wednesday, I raised matters in terms of how the consultation process might be undertaken, and I am very grateful for the concessions that have been made and the B that has actually been put up today that will give some assistance, I think, in giving the meaningful consultation. But I draw your attention to the concerns that I've got in trying to understand what I am signing off. And yes, there has been controversy. Yes, I signed this off last year, but I did so not understanding that the way in which the integrated management plan that had been put in place and the operational plan that translated to last year would mean the removal of olive trees that were grown from seeds from World War II on Owaraka, cherry blossoms that were planted in remembrance of the Great War. I had no concept when we were signing that plan off last year that I did in good faith of what it might entail. And what I knew was the integrated management plan would, in its own way, provide for future individual Maunga plans to be the opportunity to really capture and enhance the unique quality of each Maunga. And that is what I think has been the ongoing attempt by the Maunga Authority under the leadership of Paul Majuri to do. But our role and responsibility is to actually understand what we are voting for. So in that case, I did not understand that when I voted last year, that would in any way authorise not just the removal of some wilding pines and some eucalypts, but trees that had significant heritage in terms of Auckland's more recent history. But I don't want to use Owaraka because it's the subject of a judicial review today. I would prefer to leave that matter for the courts to work its way through. But I draw your attention to page 82 on the operational plan. And the only way that as I've tried to work through what it means for other Maunga, when I look at the budgetary requirements that we've got for the protection of and restoration work of the Tupuna Maunga, and where that's the only section that I can understand that actually relates to the removal of vegetation and reinstatement and revegetation. And then when I apply that to the individual Maunga, and in the case which I pointed out to the Mayor prior to this meeting, if you were to say, if you take Mangaika and North Head, there's no detail there. So do we know what we're signing off today? Do we, while it came later because of issues, as Paul Majuri has said, where it was transferred later than other Maunga, what authorisation do we actually give on that? And if I were to ask officers, and perhaps that is my question, could you please relate to me those provisions on page 82 for each of the individual Maunga? What does that actually mean in terms of vegetation removal as we go forward? What does it mean in the consultation? How do our public actually understand what is being proposed if we go through each individual Maunga? I think that is the sort of information I want to have before I sign off. I have been a strong advocate of all members of this governing body signing off on the LTP and on the budgets of the Maunga Authority. And it really is, it's heartbreaking to actually find myself in this situation. But I want to know where there are going to be matters that we will now know are controversial, that then become the subject of judicial reviews. Where is the detail on that vegetation removal? And where is the breakdown of those individual trees, particularly where there may be sort of historical context, heritage context? I'm disinterested in what would be normal. And I come from this as somebody who's worked in the ecological field for a very long time through the Motatapu Restoration Trust, and I think the reputation of what we have been able to achieve over the last 21 years speaks for itself in terms of ecological gains. I'm not trying to be vexatious here. What I simply seek to understand is setting aside that standard vegetation which is important to have removed, where is the detail of those trees for the individual maunga for me to understand? I am also...
Yeah, Councillor, I think we've got the specificity of that question. It's a
that is
6-minute question.
But it needs to be...
Yeah, I'm happy to put that...
So that in the context
I'm happy, sorry, let me get an answer to that. We've got the question. It's around the specificity of what the operational plan might involve in terms of the removal of vegetation. So,
and also where that counts in terms of revegetation and fire risk right at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. Meredith.
All right, so as Phil mentioned earlier, the purpose of the operational plan is to set out the framework under which Auckland Council undertakes the routine management at the direction of the Maunga Authority. So it essentially sets out the broad purpose being to set out the funding levels and the level of service agreed. So historically, we've seen those operational plans not containing that level of detail, and we wouldn't generally, under the terms of Section 60, expect that level of detail to be contained in the operational plan. And as you know, it's not specifically outlined there at present. We don't think it is a statutory requirement to contain that level of detail, although a conversation about what level of detail is appropriate is one to be had with the Maunga Authority.